So I've been a ham for about 6 years now, and I've also been a renter. And in that time, I've actually lived in about 3 to 4 places. And in every single one of those places, I was able to get a HF antenna, an infed half wave up, and not cause any problems with landlords, even on 2-story apartments. Actually, maybe hopefully going to be moving into a house here soon. So I thought this is my last opportunity to tell the story about how I've gotten away with it. Maybe some of you guys might find this helpful as well. I know there are a lot of renters out there, and if you're like me, your first thought is, I'll never be able to get on HF because I am renting, or it's not worth getting on HF because the antenna that I use won't be good enough. So this is kind of a video to show you guys how I've done it and how I've managed to make thousands of contacts out of apartments on HF for the past few years. So stay tuned. The method that I'm going to use today and that I've always used involves finding some type of structure outside with a window placement on the same side as the structure and using some type of green or black wire as well as 550 cord in order to get a wire up in that structure. The common thing to do with trying to do stealth antennas in situations like this is to just put up a balcony antenna if you're in an apartment or something like that and tear it down. And I've always been more ambitious this way. 6 years of doing this in 3 different locations, and I've never had an issue. Take that with what you will. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, before I move into a house, hopefully here before the end of the year, I wanted to talk one last time about how I've been getting on HF for the past 6 years in an apartment with an infed half wave. All right, so I don't normally record outside. It's very windy out here, somebody's weed eating, and I have traffic here behind me. So you guys just bear with me during this time while I show you something that I think is very important during your hunt. So we don't always have the chance to actually choose our apartment. But if we do, I'm gonna show you guys 2 different things to look for if you're gonna do the same thing that I do, right? So the first thing you're gonna look for is trees. Trees are really good because you can throw up wire antennas in your trees and kind of hide them. And you don't have to rely on putting up existing structures, and you can really get an antenna to really blend into these trees. The next thing you're going to look at is the location of a window in your apartment. So if you look behind me here, but this window here, you want a window that is on the same side of said tree, okay? And that's going to be for your transmission cable. So the goal is you want a window on the same side as some type of large structure outside, preferably a tree, and if you can help it away from like a metal shed such as this, right? Because it's going to throw off your measurements. But it's not going to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be. I'm going to show you how I've been actually able to route my transmission cable without doing any type of permanent change or any type of damage to the structure of any of the apartments that I've been in. And that is with a special little tool. I forget, it's the Comment something, but it is a window pass-through. I'm going to show you guys right now. It has worked for me in the past 3 apartments that I've been in. The SWR is the same, it seems, as if it was not there at all. And it allows you to route a cable underneath the window and still close it and lock it. That way you can actually get transmission line in and out of your building without being too obvious. So let's take a look at what mine looks like here. So here on the outside, you'll see what's happening is my transmission line here that goes outside. I think there's a cat in the window. It goes outside, and then this little metal ribbon cable actually goes down and under the window, and I'm going to show you guys what that looks like on the other side. On the other side of this window, you can see it just routes right under here, and I have made one change, and I'll open the window just to show you guys what it looks like. This one change here is I've put in black electrical tape over the wire over the years so that it doesn't break into the cable, or maybe metal from the window doesn't touch the shielding and affect the SWR too much, which hasn't been a problem for me. All I really do is I just stuff the cable down in the window, I close it, I lock the window, right? It's locked. I prop it up so there's no stress here on the cable. And then from there, I can run my transmission line anywhere that I like in the house. Now, you don't need to be really too picky about the tree. And I'm going to show you guys me throwing up an antenna just like I always have. Here's the deal. I know my window's here, and I have a transmission cable, right? And it's going to an infed, which is the antenna that I do recommend for this, because you can just, basically you can have one end at your window, right? You don't have to have a giant dipole, 2 different structures, and a line coming down in between them. That's really obvious. That's the type of stuff that will get you in trouble. It's the type of stuff that just causes issues. and really the end-fed half-wave is not that much of a compromise. It is not as efficient as a dipole antenna, but I haven't had any problems making, I don't know how many thousands of contacts, and so I really recommend an end-fed half-wave if you're in a situation like this, because now all I have to do is I find a tie-down point for the end-fed, and here you can see that I've tied it off to something large and metal. If you're doing this, you probably want to have some type of ground, but as you can see, my transmission line's tied off here, and here's my wire, and now all I have to do is basically throw this up in a tree. And I'm going to show you guys real quick, if you're new to this, typically how this is done. You will grab your end of the antenna, right, the wire, and you're going to want some 550 cord or some type of string tied to it. So, and you're going to need a lot of it. Imagine as much as getting the antenna up on one of those top branches and then all the way back down to tie off, right? You'll need lots of string attached to your antenna, and at the very end of it, you'll want a forestry bag. And I don't know the exact term, I'll put it on the screen, but basically this is just like a little sack, usually with some type of sand or rock, and you can tie off your 550 cord on the end of that, and it makes it very easy to throw it over big structures, usually such as a tree, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now and put my antenna back up. You're gonna find something on the ground to tie it off to. And if you look around, obviously look for something inconspicuous. But I just happen to have this pole here that's in the yard that's naturally here. It's a very sturdy structure. So once I throw that antenna up in the tree, I'm just gonna pull the other side down, and then I'm gonna tie it to this pole over here and then call it a day. So let me go ahead and get that done. You might wanna do this in the evening because there's gonna be less people that are gonna be watching you. Because once you get the antennas up, nobody's really gonna bother you. It's gonna be one of those things where like nobody ever notices it's there. You'll be amazed at how much people don't pay attention to the everyday things around them. So the only thing that's gonna get you caught here or get you in trouble is if the neighbors call the police saying that you're trying to climb a tree or something crazy, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just tying a knot with this little forestry sack that I was talking about. And you want this to be good and tight because you're gonna be throwing it and you don't want it to come off and hit anybody. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw it up in a tree, and my goal is to get it as high as I can. So now I'm just going to go over on the other side, and I'm gonna start pulling it until my tie down's nice and tight. You don't want it too tight, right? If you get it too tight, these tree limbs, whenever it starts storming or whenever it gets windy, they're gonna pull and they're gonna potentially rip or break whatever you have your antenna line tied off to, or it may break your antenna. It's also very important when you're doing this to make sure that you're not standing under any type of branches that you might be tugging on. Make sure your pets aren't either, because potentially something could definitely come down on you. All right, so in the end, I have my end-fed half-wave. Let's see if we can't follow this wire so you guys can see it in the tree. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. I mean, if not, it's kind of a good thing, huh? But let me show you how it ties down. So originally I said that my goal was gonna be tied off on that pole. Well, after the branches broke, I didn't quite get it where I wanted it to be. And I'm gonna show you guys why that's not a problem. And you have to improvise with a lot of things like this. So the antenna wire actually just came straight down here when I was done with it. And I decided to throw it back up over this branch here. And I've routed it with that green 550 cord. And I couldn't find a place to tie it down. So what I've done is I've used one of those like a dog stake. And it's got a pretty good spot in the ground there. Here's some tips, just general apartment living as in is a ham. One, when you do these things, try to do it in the evening and try to do it when there aren't people around. Not only, like, obviously you don't want these people going to the landlords and telling them that you're ripping branches out of the tree, when usually what you're doing isn't harmful, right, as we know. But it might just freak some people out, and it might just bring some attention to yourself that you might not necessarily want at home, compared to if you were doing POTA or something like that, where there are people who you will never see again, right? Another tip that I have is to make sure that you are not interfering with other devices. Because if you're in an apartment, there's a good chance that you have people to the left of you, you have people to the right of you, you have people maybe above and below you. And if you're transmitting with 100 watts of power through a unbalanced antenna, there's a good chance that some of the RFI that even comes back in your apartment could possibly affect others. and you don't want that unnecessary attention drawn to yourself. So to do that, you can use appropriate chokes on the radio side as well as the antenna side to try to choke out some of the noise or some of the RF that might be coming back through the shield into your apartment, which you don't want. Another thing that you will need to consider is your noise floor is probably going to be considerably higher than most people. Even just being in an apartment in itself, you're surrounded by people using lots of Chinese cheap phone chargers, bad refrigerators that need repair that nobody noticed, and just lots of weird RF things that are going to completely destroy your noise floor sometimes, and that's just something that you will have to accept. Obviously, if you do use an antenna such as an infed, if it's in a more horizontal position than a vertical position, you are less likely to pick up some of the stray stuff that might be outside. Another thing you do want to consider, and this has been a struggle for me, is grounding. And grounding is a lot more obvious, I think, than the antenna itself, because it usually involves like a wire from the antenna going into the ground, right, appropriately. If it starts lightning, or you think it may storm, disconnect your antenna. Don't get shocked by lightning while you're disconnecting your antenna, but before the storm comes, you might want to just go ahead and disconnect it as it passes through your window, because there have been instances where lightning have struck, infed half waves or other ham radio antennas, and it has completely just burnt walls and caught fire and blew up radios, and that's not necessarily something that you want. And the next thing to remember is just have fun with it. We all have to compromise in some way. Just because you are running maybe an infed half wave and it's inside of a bunch of trees and it throws off the SWR and it's not the perfect shape that you would want it to be in, it doesn't mean you're not going to make contacts. And I've seen that personally over the past 6 years. Like I said, I've never had a problem with it, and I've ran some pretty crazy setups if you guys haven't seen on the channel. If you do get caught and someone maybe just inquires about the giant wire in the yard, as I have had several times done by neighbors, just let them know that you are an amateur radio operator, you're licensed, and you use it for maybe emergency preparedness, or you can even say go with the FCC guidelines of what it's about, say emergency preparedness, experimentation on the art of radio, social welfare. Don't tell them you're preparing for the end of the world or an EMP or nuclear war. Just let them know that you're listening to the radio, and that's generally what I tell people. I just tell them, hey, I'm listening to the radio. This is my HF radio antenna. It's a hobby of mine. And if you're just casual about it in that way, everything's fine. Don't start digging into all of the little specific things, because the more information you give them after that, you tend to tip off some people who are not quite right in the head, and you could potentially cause yourself some problems in the future. Anyways, that's basically it for the video. This is how I've operated, and that's pretty much it. 73 to you.